My sister likes to steal everything from me, so I stole her boyfriend Michael. I taught him to fight, get tattoos, smoke, and teach him to kiss. Before the college entrance exam, my sister cried and begged me. Can you let Michael go? He's not like you. In the pouring rain, I turned around and saw Michael's handsome face pale. I smiled and leaned over to pat my sister's face. Take your mom and your little boyfriend and get out. 7 years later, I received love letters from 3 male guests at the same time on a third-rate romance roundup. Michael, who has become a top stream, puts me against the back of the door and tightens his grip on my waist, his voice hard. You said you'd only teach me. I'm a small and transparent person in the 18th line of the entertainment industry. My manager, Ms. Johnson, managed to find me a job as a romance director, taking the black and red route. Scum. The script is Scum Girl. Remember that. I kept it in mind, but I didn't expect to run into Michael here. I was carrying a huge suitcase and was embarrassed. The first time I met Michael was sophomore year. My mom died that summer, and my dad brought his longtime secretary into the house. Along for the ride was the illegitimate daughter they'd been hiding for 16 years. Amanda, this is Aunt Sue, and your sister, Sophia. Sophia Sue became Sophia from that day on. That quiet, soft, and timid face hid behind a harmless and pleasing smile, but there was triumph hidden in the bottom of her eyes. Sister. We'll be family from now on. I slammed the door and didn't come home for 2 months. Then later, when my sophomore year started, I finally went back. The only condition was that I had to transfer to Sophia's high school, first middle school. My dad's face still didn't look good. The first high school is the provincial key. This time to send you and spend a lot of effort. You go to the honest class, more with your sister to learn, know it? I smiled. Of course I know, Sophia, good grades, good looking, and Michael always occupy the first and second place in the first middle school. It is rumored that the two of them are a couple, and they often go to the study room together for dates. At the end of the alley, the first moment I saw that young man wearing a blue and white school uniform with a cool look on his face, I changed my mind. You guys, go beat him up, and I'll go save. I waited until the cigarette in my hand was half smoked and the flavor of menthol swept through my chest, before I walked over. Secretly, this group of people do not have a light hand, even know to greet the face. I heart a little disgusted, threw the school uniform and school bag, and finally went to the convenience store to buy him a Band-Aid. I went to the convenience store and bought him a Band-Aid. Put it on, or someone will see it tomorrow. This must hurt Sophia. Michael wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth and came up from behind, handing the stuff over with his other, still clean hand, silent and stubborn. Thanks. And, your book bag. I blinked and tiptoed over to it, smiling imploringly. Good student, thank you. The teenager took half a step back in shock and panic, the tips of his ears quietly blushing. Later, Michael and I spent more and more time together. Anyone who saw it asked Sophia about it, only to be rewarded with a grudging smile. Everyone knew I had stolen Sophia's boyfriend. Then Sophia found me, eyes red. I knew you were just trying to get back at me, and now you've achieved your goal. Amanda, please leave Michael alone, he's not like you. There was the sound of something hitting the floor and I turned around, it was a pale Michael. At his feet were the sweetened chestnuts he had waited in line for an hour to buy for me. The rain suddenly pours down and I withdraw my eyes, smiling as I lean over to pat Sophia's cheek. Take your mom and your little boyfriend and get out. It's not a big deal to meet an ex-boyfriend by chance, the key is that they are 100 times better than you, and that's embarrassing. Michael's dark narrow eyes swept this way without any emotion, like looking at a stranger. Is this already forgetting me? I long sigh of relief. Forget good, Michael fan fighting power in the circle is notorious, I go to provoke him, maybe peeled layer skin. It's better to make some money and leave. Sister smoke? A surprised voice came, I turned my head and saw a white and handsome young boy running over. He looked familiar. Leo? This seems to be the male lead from the previous web series. At that time, I was the third female and had very few scenes with him, but he had a lively and enthusiastic personality, so we privately added Facebook. Sister Smoke, why didn't you tell me you were coming here too? Leo stretched out his hand at me, your suitcase is heavy, isn't it? Let me help you. The rest of my eyes swept over the row of cameras in front of me, this is already recording? I was naturally happy to have someone to help me. Thank you then, I bent my eyes and smiled at him. His face suddenly reddened a bit, not daring to look directly into my eyes, and he stuttered a bit in his speech. No thanks, I should. Looking at his reaction, I blinked and wanted to laugh even more. He's still a fledgling brother, his mind is simple and his emotions are written on his face. The director clapped his hands. Okay, now that all the guests have arrived, let me talk to you about the rules. Let's Have Hot Love is a third-rate love show. The director's team invited 8 guests, except for a pair of vegetarians, the rest are small love beings or small actors. The point of view is that ambiguous entanglement between young men and women. Of course, because of Michael's arrival, I think the program's grade has been raised by at least 3 notches. Today most of the teachers are meeting each other for the first time, in order to deepen your understanding of each other. The evening's dinner will be done by all of you together, and then the final vote will decide your rooms, so I hope you all have a pleasant evening. Me? What the heck? Cooking by yourself? And with so many people together? I didn't finish work until 5 a.m., and then I rushed to the airport without stopping, and I've only slept for a total of 2 hours since I've been running around all day, and now I'm actually having to suffer through this. But the female guest of honor, number 1, has already set the task in motion. Isabella, the newest young flower, looked at me with a smile. Amanda, I remember you said you're especially good at making fish soup. Why don't I leave this dish to you? Artists always have a persona, and I can't remember which interviews I've done where I've made such a big deal out of it. Leo promptly relieved me. Smokey, let me help you with the fish. When he said that, the 2 male guests next to him couldn't help but look at him. Michael was the only one who had already turned away. I nodded, yeah. Half an hour later, I looked at the large stovetop and fell into silence. David, the second male guest, came over at some point with an eager attitude. Amanda, do you need any help? I tilted my head. It seems that this person had already agreed to help Isabella with the cooking, and now he's coming here to offer his services? Before I could say no, a clear and cold voice came from behind me. It seems that this dish is quite laborious and requires so many people to help. But the kitchen is so big, it's really hard for you all to squeeze in here. There was a hint of awkwardness in the air. As if I didn't hear the mockery in his words, I turned around and raised my eyebrows at him. Why, does Mr. Chin want to use the kitchen too? I can let you go first. Michael's gaze landed on me for the first time, and he said in a single word, thank you, Mr. Chin, for your kind words, but no need. He seemed to pronounce that sentence, Mr. Chin, with gritted teeth. I was in a trance for a moment. I was used to hearing Amanda in the teenager's cool voice with a little bit of love, and it was quite hard to adapt to the sudden change of address. I tied up my ponytail casually and smiled flirtatiously. Ms. Chen is too polite, but since we are destined to be together, it is definitely necessary to help each other and love each other, isn't it? In my heart, I secretly spit on myself for actually being able to say such hypocritical words without changing my color. I slapped David's arm. Excuse me, I'm ready to get started. I can't be blamed for any injuries. David lost his smile. Ms. Amanda, has anyone ever told you that you're kind of funny? I shrugged. No, I only hear people complimenting me on my beauty. David laughed. In the afterglow, Michael's face froze for a moment, as if he remembered something unpleasant from the past, and his jaw tightened. The day he was beaten, he followed me for a long time, asking me my name. I got impatient with him and nudged him in the chest, condescending. Am I pretty? 17-year-old Michael, who had probably never seen anyone like me before, pursed his thin lips for a long time, before nodding softly. That's fine, if you want to find me, the prettiest one in the first grade is the one. I really don't know where the confidence came from at that time, and dared to say this kind of words loudly in Michael's face. A distraction, hot oil suddenly splashed onto my arm, scalding me so much that I subconsciously took a step back. Smokey. Leo came out of nowhere, looking nervous. You burned yourself? He raised his hand and was about to pull my arm over to check. I didn't move to avoid it. It's okay, I'll just rinse it off. Putting down my things, I turned around to turn on the faucet, just in time to bump into Michael wrinkling his eyebrows and looking over. No, this person dislikes me to this extent. The camera is still rolling, don't even pretend. Are you? Isabella stood in the doorway and called out to him. Her face was a good and sweet smile. Can I trouble you to come and help me? She had worked with Michael on a movie before and was already considered a familiar face among these people. With a cute look and a sweet and soft voice, she was worthy of being a sweet girl little flower who attracted amazing fans. Michael gave a and walked over. The two of them were side by side, and it was a perfect match. I suddenly felt little interest, simply cleaned up and went back to cook a fish soup. Although the fish was mushy, and the soup was still dripping with oil, it could barely be considered fish soup. During the meal, Leo didn't know which tendon was wrong. He drank 2 bowls of that pot of fish soup, and was simply the king of the show. Michael's cooking was actually the best, but he didn't eat much himself. He didn't touch a single bite of the fish soup. Well, Topstream's figure management was really strict. After dinner, each of the 8 guests went to a small dark room to vote for the heartthrob of the day. Michael had just come out when I was there. I guess he'll pick Isabella? As I brushed past him, Isabella's voice was still faintly heard behind me. I called out to him. Michael. He paused and looked sideways, his dark eyes deep in the night, as if something was surging. I was a little curious. How are you and Sophia doing? The bottom of his eyes seemed to have frost condensed in an instant. The corner of his lips smiled like a sneer like irony. Amanda, in what capacity are you asking me this question? Michael's fire came from an inexplicable source. Could it be that I think I'm an 18-line, not qualified to ask about the top stream of the love life? In fact, I don't blame me for gossiping. Senior year I transferred to the field, and then never returned to that home. I've never been back to that house since then. I've even cut off contact with everyone in the Cheen family. I only heard that Sophia and Michael got into the same university. I took half a step back and laughed. I wasn't thinking about caring about how my old friend is doing. If you don't want to talk about it, then you don't have to. I don't know if it's just an illusion, but my active retreat didn't make Michael's face look better. His thin lips were pursed and his mood seemed to be even worse. The PD reminded me to hurry over, and without another word, I waved my hand and moved on. Please write your favorite guest on the card. The results of this poll will be anonymous. After reading the line, I thought about it and wrote down Leo's name. The kid was taking care of me, so it was a good way to return the favor. After I cast my vote, it was time to book my room. I heard that the 2 people with the most votes will be assigned to neighboring rooms. Emma, the vegetarian guest of honor, couldn't hold back her curiosity and gossiped with me. The male guest will definitely be Michael, and for the female guest, it should be Isabella, right? Apart from her, I'm the lowest-ranked female guest. She probably thought that I was close and easy to contact, and when she was talking, she looked at Isabella with envy in her eyes. That's Michael. I'm so happy to live next door to him. Not really. I said casually. Michael was a light sleeper. At that time, I dragged him to skip class and went to an internet cafe to spend the night. I played games, and he wrote papers. He wasn't interested in games, and would fall asleep on the table next to me after writing his papers. But every time I hit the annoyance of the mouse-smashed keyboard, he will wake up, the pair of clear and fresh eyes so quietly looking at me. Later, I realized that he was having a nervous breakdown and would not be able to sleep with even the slightest sound of the keyboard. Mr. Michael, Ms. Amanda, the 2 of you share house number 1. The PD's voice rang out, and the room was instantly dead silent. Isabella's face instantly changed, and her gaze towards me flashed with a hint of jealousy. I froze too. Living next door to Michael? Is the program team afraid that I won't be able to hold the script of a scummy girl securely enough? Forget it, after getting the notice fee, it's time to cooperate and act. 20 minutes later, I pushed open the door of house number 1. The wooden houses on this island are small, staggered, with 2 adjoining bedrooms in each house. In a way, I could almost be considered cohabiting with Michael. The only awkward thing was the house only had 1 bathroom. I was too sleepy to knock on Michael's door with my toiletry bag and bath towel. Michael opened the door, naked, with only a towel ready to take a shower, and the atmosphere instantly froze as we looked at each other. I put my hands together and said pitifully, Mr. Chen, can you let me take a shower first? I can barely keep my eyes open. The camera in the corridor was still on. Michael's eyes were cold. After 3 seconds of confrontation, I covered my lips and yawned, the corners of my eyes stained with tears. I can. He finally answered back, closing the door as he said it, as if he found it unbearable to be in the same space as me. I desperately tried to pull my gaze back from his 6-pack abs and turned to leave, But then I caught a glimpse of an emergency medical kit sitting on the table in his room. I pointed it out. Mr. Chen, did you bring the burn cream? Half an hour later, I was in the bathroom taking the burn cream and smearing it on the wound a little bit. In addition to my arm, there was also a small red mark on my chest, which wasn't seen because I wore black short sleeves during the day. After the shower, I went to the balcony to blow dry my hair, and I didn't expect Leo to actually come over. Smokey, I got someone to borrow a tube of burn cream for you. This kid is quite thoughtful. Thank you, but I've already applied the medicine. Leo froze. Huh? But Sister Smoke, didn't you say you were in a hurry and didn't bring any medicine with you? Mr. Chen did. I borrowed his. I let my hair down and combed my fingers casually. He keeps stuff like that on hand at all times. Except for the first time, Michael never let me move again. Sometimes when trouble came to his door, he would add a little color to his face and body, but he always said it didn't matter. He had brought medicine. Leo looked a little strange and I looked back. That comment just now was just too ambiguous. It looked like I was having something with him. I ignore that bit of strangeness and smile at him. But I got your thoughts, thanks, it's late, go back to bed early. Leo turns around and walks out a few steps, then jogs back in. His eyes are warm with undisguised enthusiasm. I forgot to say, Smoke. He was nervous but blunt. You're really pretty, today. Bang! A not-so-light slamming sound suddenly sounded behind me. I turned around and was seeing Michael, who had just finished his shower, looking over with an icy face. I'm a light sleeper, please keep your voice down. Leo apologized repeatedly, turned around and quickly ran away. He's become a top streamer, and he's got a big temper too. I took the burn cream and walked over to hand it back to him, slightly tilting my face up, in a half-joking tone. Brother Michael, are you really angry? Michael was actually a year younger than me, but he refused to call me Smokey like everyone else, and with a stubborn donkey's temper, I shifted tactics and called out to him sweetly with a birthday cake in my hand the first time I dragged him out of class to celebrate his birthday. Happy birthday, Michael. There was surprise, dismay, and bewilderment in Michael's eyes. Then, for the first time, he took the initiative to hold my hand. 17-year-old Michael was really easy to fool, unlike the cold and silent man in front of me, who was hard to figure out. My iPhone vibrated and I picked it up to look at a Facebook friend request. David. Amanda. Michael suddenly sneered out. Are you that unloved? The camera had been turned off and Michael had finally stopped being polite. I moved, ruffled my half-wet hair behind my ear, and leaned against the doorframe. I really don't understand what Mr. Chen is saying. Isn't what we came here to participate in, the love complex? This is just the beginning. How can I know which one suits me best if I don't get in touch with everyone more? Michael pursed his thin lips. So, anyone will do? I inclined my head. Michael, you're not thinking of rekindling an old flame with me, are you? Bang! The door of the room finally closed tightly. I rubbed the tip of my nose and turned around to go back to my room. Dog man, so hard to serve. The next day's recording was simple. Each pair of guests who were grouped together had to work together to accomplish a task. Michael and I were very unfortunate to be assigned the most tiring task of picking coconuts. But that's good, at least we didn't have to figure out how to act with Michael in front of the camera. He was bored the whole time and I was happy to relax. The PD probably didn't find us interesting, so they called Isabella and David over. When we were about to wrap up, Isabella suddenly screamed and stepped back in shock. There's a snake. She tripped over something at her feet and her body fell down uncontrollably, and the next second I felt something yank hard on my cuff. Stabbing a coldness in my chest, my shirt was just ripped apart by her. Done. I'm going to be naked. There were so many machines filming. My mind went blank for a moment, and I subconsciously had to hug my chest and crouch down, but in the next second I suddenly fell into a broad and tough embrace. The sky and the earth turned around, only the warm breath of the man's body easily enveloped me. The machine was still tapping. I snapped back to my senses and instinctively struggled to push him away, only to be held tightly in his arms. His voice was low and tight. Don't move, do as you're told. Dead silence. The first to react was Isabella, who panicked and apologized. Yes, I'm sorry Amanda, I didn't mean to, are you okay? A weight fell on my shoulders. It was Michael who draped his jacket over me. I was wrapped into a dumpling. I'll take her back to change. After saying that, and not caring how those people at the scene reacted, Michael pulled me and walked back. About Michael's face was too cold, Isabella's tears were about to fall, very embarrassed, and did not dare to go forward to say half a word more. My feet lurched and I couldn't help but let out a soft hiss. Michael turned around, his brow furrowed. Michael actually rarely gets angry, nothing seems to make his emotions ripple, but in the 2 days I've been here, I've gotten the feeling that he's moved to anger several times. Especially at this moment. I whispered, that. I think I just broke my foot. In the next second, Michael suddenly picked me up in a horizontal hug without saying a word. The sound of huffing cold air came faintly from the other side of the camera crew. She's hurt, I'll come back later to finish the rest of the mission. PD was about to cry. It's fine for me to be injured as an 18th tier little girl, but how dare they really tire out Michael? It's fine. Mr. Chen's health is important. Then, I'll ask Mr. Chen to take care of him. It was only after I went back that I realized that the injury was quite serious, and my entire ankle was swollen. Michael came over in silence with ice wrapped in a towel, sat down beside me, and gave me a cold compress. Occasionally, I could feel the warm touch of his fingertips, as if they had been electrified. His eyes were slightly downcast, his black frontal hair covering his handsome eyebrows and eyes, just like that silent and stubborn teenager 7 years ago. The atmosphere inexplicably became ambiguous. Duck duck. Sister Smoke, are you inside? Leo's worried voice came from outside the door. Why is this kid here? I was just about to open my mouth when Michael suddenly raised his eyes and glanced at me, his tone had little rise and fall. If you want to see him again, at least change your clothes. I looked down and instantly exploded. I actually forgot to change my clothes. The jacket was also twisted during the process of him carrying me back just now, and the scenery of my chest was hidden. Why didn't you remind me? I couldn't help but kick him with my one intact foot. Only after I kicked him did I realize, holy shit. There was a camera in the room. Don't worry, it won't be captured. Michael's mood seemed to suddenly become very good, the corner of his lips curved very lightly, holding my ankle to hold me in place, the temperature of his palm almost burning. I tucked my legs. Let's go then, getting up and going over to the door. Smokey-chan-Leo had just half greeted me when the door to the room was unceremoniously slammed shut by Michael. His cold, faint voice could still be heard through the door. She's not comfortable seeing anyone else right now. Me. Injured and inconvenient, the program team did not dare to make a demon again, specially found a wheelchair for me, so the next few days I was very free. Sometimes chatting with other guests, sometimes playing a hand, anyway, just no longer involved with Michael. The first installment finally aired. Then I got a call from Ms. Johnson. Crap, Amanda, the show exploded. You're on fire. What? What? I had just finished taping the show, and I hadn't had a chance to watch it yet. Ms. Johnson was so excited. Michael. You're actually in a relationship with Topstream. You're going to soar. I clicked on Twitter. When I clicked on Twitter, I found the purple-red words on Hot 100, Michael, Amanda. The square was full of program videos and screaming chickens. Ah, this Amanda sister is so beautiful. I declare this is my new wife. Sister is so tugging, I love it. I love her. She's a trolling beauty, who knows what she's doing. I came here for Michael and Isabella, but I ended up falling into a misty CP. The way these two looked at each other was amazing. The way these two look at each other is amazing. Their aura is completely different from the others. I think so too. Michael is famous for his modesty and politeness in the circle. He's only cold to Amanda, but his eyes are always drifting towards her. I love that kind of awkwardness. I bet a pack of chili fries that there's something going on between these two. Ms. Johnson was already excited. Amanda, hold on. If you play your cards right, you're going to blow it. I was a bit annoyed. I'm afraid Michael will blow me up first. What? I talked about it. I dumped him. I explained briefly. I'm afraid his fans could just rip me apart. There was a moment of silence on Ms. Johnson's end, busting her chops. Didn't you say when you joined the industry that you got into it to make money? Indeed. I touched my pocket, empty, and then remembered that I had quit smoking for a long time. Mr. Chin, it's time to prepare for the interview. The crew rushed me, so I turned off my iPhone. Here we go. The director's team's attitude towards me was very subtle. At first, they didn't take me seriously, but then Michael hugged me back, and there were rumors about our relationship, so the staff was a lot more polite to me. But in the past few days, Michael and I had each reverted back to being very unfamiliar with each other, and they were drumming in their hearts again. Ms. Jean, may I ask if your favorite male guest has changed after this period of contact? I've always been conscientious about my work, and as a scum girl, of course it's impossible to stay with just one man. I blinked, yes. PD continued, oh? What was it about him that got to you the most? A long figure skimmed past the door. I thought for a few seconds, he kind of looks like my ex-boyfriend. As the programs aired one after another, the number of times I was on hot searches skyrocketed. Even when the bloopers were released, my name could take up several hot lists. Most of them were cursing me. What the hell, Amanda chose Leo as her first guest of honor. What's wrong with her? Leo is only 19. She's 5 years older than him. What's wrong with 5 years old? I love to see sibling love. I think Leo likes her more. He's been showing her affection on the sly and on the sly. Don't get me wrong. Xingyu only worked with Amanda Sr. before, so he took extra care of her. There's no other meaning. Fans, don't fool yourselves. Your main man has never taken his eyes off Smokey. You guys haven't forgotten that he's in a romance series, have you? Amanda is the kind of woman who knows how to have fun. I still like Isabella's kind of pure and sweet girl. Finally, the night Michael and I picked coconuts together, the hot search went straight to the top. My backstage was full of private messages. Don't touch the 18th line, can't you show some face? Stay away from Michael. You want to be famous, aren't you? Michael is too manly, isn't he? I'm crazy about him. Smokey Munmun on the big score. I told you, this guy is different for Amanda. They're definitely in a relationship. Ms. Johnson advised me to stay off the internet for a while. It doesn't matter if they yell at me anyway, but I've been getting a lot of books lately because of the heat. Today's shoot was to go to the beach and play games together, but halfway through the shoot, it suddenly rained. Mr. Chan, here's another umbrella. The crew was of course most worried about Michael and immediately handed over an umbrella. Isabella almost immediately pulled on his sleeve and sneezed softly. The director shouted, please share an umbrella with the two teachers, let's switch to indoor filming for the rest of the shoot. Michael, however, did not move to avoid Isabella's movement and raised his eyes towards me. Isabella froze and followed suit. The vegetarian male guest happened to be right beside me, and directly took off his jacket and handed it over. Don't get wet, you'll catch a cold when you go back later. He said this just in time to turn his still okay side face to his camera, which must have come out gentle and gentlemanly. I smiled inwardly and curled my eyes cooperatively, thank you. Just as I ran back inside, the staff handed me a towel, and I was rubbing my hair when I suddenly saw Michael return alone. Mr. Chen. Where is your umbrella? The PD was shocked. Michael was already soaked to the skin, and his eyebrows were getting colder and colder. I subconsciously looked outside and saw Isabella standing alone in the rain with her umbrella, looking embarrassed. It was pouring with rain, and the two of them holding umbrellas were traveling together. It was definitely a big hot spot when photographed. Who would have thought that Michael actually refused to even share the same umbrella with her? Michael glanced at me, eyes extremely light and extremely cold. Oh, I am still wearing the jacket of the vegetarian male guest. Indoor shoot. Isabella played a bit of violin and the talented Sweetie set up enough. David sang a song with a vegetarian female guest, and the atmosphere was warm. Anyway, everyone was fighting for material, except Michael and I, sitting at the left and right ends, never got up or looked at each other since the beginning. When I went to the bathroom, I noticed that the staff around me were looking at me in a subtle way. I vaguely feel wrong, directly took out the iPhone, just to see the top of the pile of numerous abusive text messages and phone calls. My iPhone number had been exposed. Then I saw my own push news. Enchanting actress Black history of bullying. Shocking. My heart sank, and when I clicked on Twitter, I saw that a marketing number with millions of followers had posted a long blog post about an hour ago, the entire text of which was an indictment of how I was a little tween in high school who bullied my classmates and stole my own sister's boyfriend. It was interspersed with a side profile picture of me leaning against a wall, smoking a cigarette. The comments section had exploded. Crap, Amanda, Is that Amanda who was especially hot in the recent Come Hot Love? The filter is completely shattered. It's the first time I've ever been a fan of an actress, but I didn't expect it to be a school bully. I've seen it all. That's Amanda in the photo, right? How old was she? How old was she when she started smoking? No way. You're even stealing your own sister's boyfriend? How dare you? I've always thought that she's not a good-looking girl. Sure enough. Has been a serial killer in the variety show. Yuck. Ms. Johnson sent numerous Facebook messages. Amanda. What the hell is going on here? You've really done that stuff before. Meanwhile, a strange friend request came in. Amanda, still happy? I guessed the identity of the other person almost immediately. Sophia, is this fun? The blog post was carefully written and contained so many details that I couldn't think of anyone else but her. I could feel Sophia's amusement through the screen. What, are you scared? Which one of the above you haven't done? Amanda, you made me suffer so much in the first place, you don't want to have a good life either. An unmarked number called in. I stared at it for a while and picked up. The man on the other side directly cursed. Amanda, are you trying to piss me off? You've disgraced the Chin family. I wanted to laugh a little. You're welcome. Compared to you, it's still almost the same. After all, you were able to bring your illegitimate daughter home. What's the point of what I did? You. He was so angry, he couldn't speak. You come back immediately. Apologize to your sister. My eyes went cold. Sophia screws me like this, and expects me to nod my head and admit I'm wrong? That's just delusional. Mr. Thompson, if you feel sorry for your daughter, feel sorry for yourself and leave me alone. I have no interest in seeing you or your family. If you bother me again, don't blame me. Hang up and pull the plug. I closed my eyes and tried to calm my mood, which was again bad because of him, and messaged Ms. Johnson again. I did this. I'll take care of this myself. Putting away my iPhone, pulling out my calling card and throwing it in the trash, I just turned around when I ran into a pair of deep, cold eyes. My heart skipped a beat. When did Michael get here? And how much did he hear? Never mind, the heat had blown up, he'd know sooner or later. I smiled at him and lifted my leg to walk forward, but suddenly he grabbed my wrist tightly. Why didn't you tell me? I froze, twisting my head a little strangely. What? It was a corner and the light was dim, but I could see that he seemed to be extremely angry. I frowned and tried to pull my hand out. Michael. You're hurting me. When you ran away from home, you didn't even have money for food, you'd rather go to a bar and sell alcohol than say a word to me, right? Michael's voice was low and harsh, and every word felt like it was being squeezed through his teeth. I actually think he hates me. He must have seen the blog post. In my senior year of high school, I transferred to another school and completely cut off contact with the Chin family. Because I couldn't afford to rent an apartment to pay for tuition, I went to bars at night to sell alcohol. Luckily, I was good-looking and sweet-talking, so I was able to support myself. But to Michael, this seems to be a very shameful thing to do. With no energy left to struggle, I just gave up and met his gaze. Yeah, well, you can make money selling alcohol, can't you? I stepped forward and looked at him with a smile. Why, can't you accept it? But what kind of person are you to control me like that? We had already broken up by then. What right did he have to hate me? Michael was stunned and finally let go of his hand and took a step back. As if there was an invisible hand clutching my heart hard, I exhaled softly. I was a stain on him, it was so hard to clean it up, but now I've soiled him again. Don't worry. I rubbed my wrists. Our CP will be unbound soon enough, it won't affect you. He just looked at me like that, emotions I couldn't understand welling up in the bottom of his eyes, his voice disheveled and hoarse as he mumbled. Amanda, do you have a heart or not? I didn't listen anymore and turned to leave. There was still a tail left in the recording, but the atmosphere in the venue was already completely different. The director looked at me with complicated eyes, probably afraid that those Black history of mine would explode and implicate the whole program, and wanted to seize this explosive point to rub it in. So in the last part of the heart-to-heart conversation, the questions I received were more and more pointed. Amanda, you mentioned your first love last time, can you reveal when you talked about it? Isabella had a look of pure curiosity on her face. I stared at her until she sheepishly averted her eyes, before I absently spoke, can't remember. Michael, who had been silent since his return, blushed vaguely, his sharp, smooth jaw tightening. Isabella let out an ah and half-joked. Don't you always have a deep impression of your first love? Why can't you remember? It's not because you've fallen in love too much that you're confused, right? The atmosphere instantly froze. Before I could say anything, Michael on the side suddenly said, "Since you're so curious about other people's first love, why don't you tell us about your own first?" Isabella's face was instantly embarrassed, lowering her head and pretending to be shy. I haven't talked about it yet. She is a pure persona, how can she talk about her ex-boyfriend in public? Leo came out to round up the situation. The past is the past, why don't we talk about the present? He was being kind, but he didn't know how he got on Michael's nerves. There are things you can't get past. The vegetarian female guest was probably too curious and actually boldly opened her mic. Mr. Chen, you are not saying that you are still nostalgic about your first love, right? Michael did not say anything, actually is the default. I skimmed my head. First love, Sophia for him, so irreplaceable? Isabella sourly said, I don't know what kind of girl could be Mr. Chen's girlfriend. I can't believe she didn't treasure it, too much of an eye for a pearl. I lowered my head to drink water and didn't look at Michael again, only to hear his reply after a long silence. It's my fault for losing her. I blinked and drained the glass of water. It's true, the one thing a man can never forget is the white moonlight of his youth. I, on the other hand, was never in the game from start to finish. After the heart-to-heart talk, each person picks their heartthrob one last time. Actually, I didn't think it mattered who I wrote about, after all, at the speed at which public opinion on the internet festers, I'm sure I'll be cursed when this episode airs. Thinking about it, I approached the PD for advice. Director, who all picked me? PD complex expression. Love letters were written before, only Mr. Chen has not yet written, the other three are you. Oh ho. Originally wanted to shoot a scum woman playing with the hearts of the plot, the results did not expect the love letter just handed over, my side of the scandal. The key is to confess the heart of the part has been recorded one after another completed, and now re-engineer is really troublesome. So who else have I not written? PD. I said in relief, it's all about the rain. Although I may be retiring after this program, I still have professional ethics, and I will definitely follow through with the script I agreed to write for the scummy girl. The PD spoke awkwardly. Mr. Chen. I've never written about him? I haven't written about him? It doesn't seem right. I remember before. You're here. I turned around with a stiff neck. And the moment I saw Michael, I had one thought in my head, it's over. I'm a lowly 18th ranked girl, I'm not in a position to be picking on people. Michael walked over, come with me, I want to talk to you. I subconsciously avoided it, there were people around. What's the point of pulling and tugging? But Michael seemed to have made up his mind, and with a cold face, he half forced me to walk away. PD didn't even dare to say no, so he just watched us leave. After walking for a while, seeing that he didn't want to stop, I finally couldn't help myself. Michael. Michael turned around and I was suddenly silenced. Smokey? Leo's voice came, have you finished the interview? I'm a bit hungry, can you cook for me? I had just turned around to open my mouth when there was a sudden tightness on my waist. Immediately after that Michael leaned over and pressed me against the back of the door, clenching my wrist with one hand and tightening his grip on my waist with the other, his lowered voice cold and dangerous. Why didn't I know? When did you become so virtuous? I retched, Michael. You're crazy. But he ignored it, carrying a sense of oppression that was hard to ignore. What? Don't you know how to fight? Don't you know how to make money? What, he asked you to cook and you went for it? I looked at him and suddenly laughed. Michael, you're not, are you? You're so angry over a meal? He suddenly looked away, his throat slid up and down, and there was a visible expression of resignation on his face. My heart softened for a split second, and I softened my voice. Okay, I won't do it for him. I didn't have the heart to do it. I'll teach him to cook his own noodles at most. He can, they all can. Why can't I? His voice was low, husky, and hard. Amanda, you said you'd only teach me. Whether it was fighting, skipping class, kissing, or just a meal. If I pretend I don't understand, it's too fake. But then again, I didn't really understand. Michael, are you having fun? First he's all over Sophia, then he's all over me. I moved closer, my breath audible, a little further, and I could have kissed. Or, do you feel more comfortable kissing me? Michael blushed hard. Bang dash. He slammed the door and left. When he came out, Leo was still confused. Smokey, did you guys just have a fight? Nothing happened. I shook my head, inexplicably remembering Michael's aggravated look earlier, but I'm rather tired today, so you can cook the meal yourself. Leo let out a sound, looked around, and then asked in a low voice, Smoke sister, the ones on the internet I saw. Those are fake, right? I suddenly lack of interest. Leo also seemed to realize that asked too much, quickly apologized, but I was too lazy to pay attention, waved his hand back to the room. I didn't sleep well that night as expected, and the next day I was woken up by the PD. Ms. Amanda. Did you look at your iPhone? I woke up with a heavy breath, but at this moment, I could only suppress the fire. No, what's wrong? The PD was agitated. Why didn't you tell me that you are Mr. Michael's first love? My brain went down for 3 seconds. What? He handed me his iPhone. Mr. Michael announced it this morning. Twitter is stuck right now. It was indeed stuck. I clicked on it for half a day before it finally came up. The moment I saw it, I went into cardiac arrest. Michael, I'm sorry, but I'm the only one she's ever bullied. Besides, there's no need to grab, 17-year-old Michael was hers. Everyone saw Michael's Twitter feed, and he retweeted that blog post for marketing, and with a few numbers, he easily made a huge splash. Ms. Johnson came all night to settle the score with me, but Michael came out of nowhere. All your black hits have been taken down. We don't have that kind of power in a small company. Who else could it be, if not Michael? This is an official declaration of love, isn't it? It is, isn't it? Ms. Johnson couldn't even speak properly. The word love just doesn't sound right. I'm thinking too much, I'll go and ask him. When I got to the door, I bumped into Michael. The moment we met, I was so weak that I averted my gaze, and I couldn't ask him the questions that were on my mind. Michael, the first love you said the other day was actually me, right? That's too shameless. I frowned in annoyance, but luckily, the director interjected in time. Teachers. Today is our last day of recording. I woke up and could only step aside. The content of today's shooting is very little, it's just to announce last night's heartthrob guests, and those who succeeded in holding hands are considered to be entering into a passionate love affair, a nod to the topic. But at this moment, the atmosphere of the scene was so awkward that it exploded. A few of the male guests are fidgeting, both because I'm now infamous and they're asking for trouble if they confess their love to me, and because of Michael's tweet this morning. The vegetarian female guests looked at me with eyes full of shock. Mr. Cheen, you and Mr. Michael are in that kind of relationship. Why are you still coming to this show? What do you mean by that kind of relationship? But the program still had to be recorded, and after receiving 3 roses in a row, Isabella's face completely darkened. She let out a fake laugh and seemed to be envious. Ms. Amanda is amazing, so many people love her. I ignored it all and looked over at Michael. Now all that was left was his love letter that hadn't been announced yet. I didn't write it. Michael held the mic, his handsome face pale. I want to tell her in person now. The scene was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. My eyelids fluttered lightly. Amanda. The knot in his throat rolled. From 17 to now, it's only been you. After the hot search blew up that day, the discussion about Michael and I didn't stop. The show's crew is also good at messing things up, desperately editing the footage of Michael and me. Then I realized. Michael, so you were sneaking glances at me all that time? I inclined my head to the man in the kitchen who was cooking. It was his big flat, and he had brought me back after the recording, saying that it was full of enemies out there. Oh no, it was full of reporters carrying long guns. He didn't seem to realize at all that as a top stream, there were more people snapping photos of him, and it was arrogant to the core to just bring me home like that. He brought over a bowl of rice. Taste. The beef brisket stew with tomatoes is soft and flavorful. I gave a thumbs up. That's awesome, much better than what I make. The music plays, and it's the final episode of the finale. Unsurprisingly, Michael's confession in this episode was the big blowout. Both his and my comment sections have fallen. I don't believe it. You actually really likes this woman. What the hell is he thinking? I'm really convinced, if Michael's vision is as good as his eye for picking scripts, he wouldn't have to be played around by this kind of woman. Has he been bewitched? He's been depowdered in place. It's a shame to have such a sister-in-law. Lantau, Isabella is so nice. Why don't you choose her? Or anyone else, but not this one. With one hand resting on my cheek, I sent out the edited tweet on my iPhone, and then turned around to eat with Michael. The tweet was simple, just a brief account of my family of origin and my past with Michael. Of course, there was also the evidence that Isabella had contacted Sophia privately and was colluding to throw dirt on me. The tide of public opinion quickly turned one way or the other. My mom, Amanda's life turned out to be so tragic? Crap. What kind of bloodshed mansion plot is this? The father of the dregs is angry with his own mother, and then he turns around and puts the mistress back on her feet, and even brings his illegitimate daughter into the door. If I were Amanda, I'd have died with those bastards. Isn't Isabella the most disgusting one? Just because she's more popular than Amanda, she's screwing Amanda to death. The classmate of the first year of high school came to clarify that Sophia was never with Michael. It was just her wishful thinking. Wherever Michael went, she followed him there. It was very annoying. But then Michael and Amanda were real, and I even saw him doing Amanda's homework for her. Not only did the mistress's daughter take over the nest, but she also kicked out someone else's proper daughter. I said when Amanda was 18 years old, why did she hang around? She had no one to support her, so she went out to work part-time to earn her living expenses. I really think Amanda's a bit of a mess. She's so beautiful and she's being bullied like this. It's a good thing she still has Michael. Michael confessed in the last episode that he has never stopped liking Amanda in the past 7 years, and the pure love warrior fell with a bang. Finally, Michael saw the tweet, and his good-looking brow furrowed. Isn't that your least favorite thing to bring up? If I want to talk about it, I'll talk about it. I can't let you suffer after me. Not wanting to listen to his nonsense, I suddenly went over to him. Michael, do you want to kiss? Well, by the time I was out of breath and pushing people away, I was beginning to wonder if Michael had really been single all these years. How else did the technique get so good? Hey, Michael, I asked one last question as I pressed against his shoulder and stared into his intent eyes. You already knew that I was the one who told someone to block you that day? He let out a sharp gasp, but still didn't lose his head, just looked at me. After a long time, he finally nodded his head. I was furious and annoyed. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? You still want to be with me after I bullied you so much? Michael hugged me tightly, buried in my neck, his voice muffled. I can't help it. This kind of thing is never left to chance. And I saw you saving sleeping pills. I froze in my tracks. So, you fought with me, skipped class with me, stayed up all night with me. Always, never left me. At that time, Amanda was full of thorns, but too childish, full of the world, cannot find an exit. Michael became the only exit. I held back the acidic surge in my chest, held his hand, and whispered in his ear. Brother Michael, do you want to do something bad? I'll teach you. I kept that in mind, but I didn't expect to actually run into Michael here. It also proved that men don't need to be taught. The next day at noon, I got out of bed with my aching body and turned on my iPhone. Isabella tearfully apologized, but people didn't buy it, and in a short period of time, 3 brands have already terminated her contract. Her star chart has come to an end. As for Sophia, all her personal information was exposed, and someone even found her company and sent her a wreath. Not long after Sophia resigned, leaving in a panic. As for her parents, they were also implicated, so angry that they were hospitalized. Half a year later, Michael and I went back to No. 1 middle school, holding 2 little red books and taking pictures in front of the school. I smiled and said, Brother Michael, happy wedding. He gazed at me for a long time and lowered his head for a kiss. My Amanda, happy wedding. End of story.